The Dardeen family murders are often described as one of the most horrific crimes in American history. Not because they're famous, not because they're well documented, but because of how extreme the violence was, and how, even after decades, no one has ever been held accountable. This happened in 1987, in a small rural community in southern Illinois, a place where violent crime was almost unheard of. And yet what happened there was so disturbing that even seasoned investigators struggled to talk about it. This is the story of the Dardeen family murders. In November of 1987, Keith Dardeen was 29 years old. He lived with his wife Elaine, who was 30, in a quiet trailer near the town of Ina, Illinois. Elaine was pregnant, about 7 months along, and the couple was expecting their first child together. Keith worked as a treatment plant operator. Elaine was a homemaker. By all accounts, they were a normal, quiet couple. No criminal history, no known enemies, no debts, no signs of trouble. They lived simple lives. And then, suddenly, they disappeared. On November 18, 1987, Keith didn't show up for work. That immediately raised concern. He was known to be reliable. Elaine was also unreachable. Family members tried calling. No answer. Eventually, a family member drove to the trailer. What they found inside would become one of the most disturbing crime scenes ever documented. Elaine Dardeen was found in the bedroom. She had been brutally beaten, strangled. Her body showed signs of sexual assault. And then came the detail that horrified even veteran investigators. Elaine had been stabbed so violently that the unborn baby was forced from her body. The fetus was found wrapped in Elaine's nightgown and placed beside her. It was an act of extreme violence, far beyond what most crimes involve. And yet, the horror didn't end there, because Keith Dardeen wasn't in the trailer. Days later, on November 30th, nearly 2 weeks after Elaine's body was discovered, hunters made a gruesome discovery not far from the trailer. They found Keith Dardeen's body. He had been beaten to death. His body was partially clothed, and again the violence was excessive. Blunt force trauma. Severe head injuries. No mercy. Police quickly concluded this was not a robbery. Nothing of value was missing. The trailer showed no signs of forced entry. There was no evidence of a struggle that would suggest a random break-in. This was personal, extremely personal, and yet, no motive. The FBI was called in almost immediately. Agents reviewed the crime scene, the autopsy reports, and the level of brutality. Their conclusion was chilling. They believed the murders were likely committed by a lust killer, someone driven by sexual violence and domination, rather than personal connection or financial gain. The crime had hallmarks of rage, overkill, symbolic behavior, control. This wasn't about theft. This wasn't about revenge. This was about power. One of the most disturbing aspects of the case is that Elaine was likely alive during part of the attack. Investigators believe she was assaulted, beaten, strangled, and stabbed, in that order. The killer didn't panic. The killer didn't rush. The killer took time, which suggests something even more frightening. This person was comfortable with extreme violence. Police interviewed neighbors, co-workers, friends, family. They examined Keith's workplace. They searched for affairs, disputes, financial stress, anything that could explain why this family was targeted. Nothing came up. No stalkers reported, no threatening phone calls, no suspicious behavior. It was as if the Dardeens had been selected at random, and that possibility terrified investigators. Because random violence means the killer could strike again. In fact, there's strong reason to believe the killer may have been active before and after. Around the same time as the Dardeen murders, southern Illinois and neighboring states experienced a series of violent crimes with similar characteristics. Women attacked in rural areas, sexual violence, blunt force trauma, extreme overkill. Some investigators believe the Dardeen murders may be connected to other unsolved cases from the late 1980s, possibly part of a larger pattern that was never fully recognized. One theory suggests the killer may have been a transient, someone passing through the area, possibly using rural highways and back roads. Another theory suggests the killer may have been someone local, someone who knew the trailer's location, knew the couple's routines, and knew how to enter without forcing a door. But again, No evidence clearly supports either theory. What makes this case particularly haunting is how little the killer left behind. No fingerprints, no usable DNA. Forensic science in 1987 was limited, especially in rural areas. No weapon recovered, no witnesses, and no confession. The crime scene was brutal, but oddly clean in terms of clues. It's as if the killer knew exactly how to avoid being identified. The FBI profile suggested the killer was likely male, socially isolated, possibly unemployed or underemployed, and had a history of violent fantasies. Someone capable of compartmentalizing. Someone who could commit unimaginable violence and then return to normal life. Over the years, police have followed up on tips, hundreds of them. Some claim to know someone who talked too much. Others pointed fingers at acquaintances, co-workers, strangers. Every lead went nowhere. The case quietly went cold. But among law enforcement circles, the Dardenne murders are still discussed with unease, because even among unsolved crimes, this one stands out, not just for its brutality, but for how completely the killer vanished. No escalation, no known repeat offense, no signature that reappeared definitively, just one horrific event, frozen in time. Elaine and Keith Dardenne were laid to rest together. Their unborn child was buried with them. 3 lives taken. No justice, no answers. And decades later, one haunting question remains. Who would do this? Who could walk into a quiet rural home, commit acts of unimaginable violence, and disappear forever? Was it a serial predator who moved on? A local who blended back into the community? Or someone who died shortly after, taking the truth with them? The Dardenne family murders remain one of America's darkest unsolved cases. And perhaps the most terrifying part is this. The killer was never caught, which means they may have lived, or may still live, among ordinary people. If you were an investigator on this case, what theory would you focus on? A random predator? A serial offender? Or someone hiding in plain sight? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the most disturbing unsolved crimes in history, make sure to subscribe. Because some mysteries don't fade with time, they wait.